While I was busy at work, an unexpected email notification popped up on my computer screen, flickering with an ominous persistence. Upon hastily reaching out to my husband, Greg, hoping it was some sort of technical error or a misunderstanding, he began to explain the situation with a chilling calmness that felt like ice water running through my veins. "Oh, sorry about that," he said, his voice devoid of any guilt. "I've fallen for someone else and decided to start a new life with her." Before I could even process the magnitude of his betrayal, he revealed the rest of his calculated plan. He was taking the luxury camper van we had recently purchased. Despite the fact that the vehicle was in my name and the loan was my legal responsibility, he intended to drive off into the sunset with it. I tried desperately to dissuade him, pleading with him to think about our life and our child, but my husband simply ignored my cries, abruptly ended the call, and immediately became unreachable. In the end, Greg disappeared with his mistress, leaving me alone with a broken heart and a substantial debt that felt like an anchor dragging me to the bottom of the ocean. As a mother to our 10-year-old son, Ryan, I never envisioned such an unfair and cruel situation. I found myself at a total loss, my mind going blank as I stood in my office, surrounded by the mundane sounds of a workday that no longer made sense. At 35 years old, my name is Hannah, and my husband Greg is the same age. We had been together for over a decade, building what I thought was a stable family of 3. Our son, Ryan, was the light of my life. From a very young age, he had displayed remarkable intelligence, often found reading complex papers on the computer, or seeking my opinion on scientific and social topics that were far beyond his years. He was a quiet, observant, and deeply thoughtful child who seemed to understand the world better than most adults. In sharp contrast to Ryan's steady nature, Greg was perpetually unstable. Throughout our marriage, he struggled to hold down a steady job, jumping from one failed venture to another. I worked a demanding full-time job to keep our heads above water, constantly worrying about our financial future while Greg drifted. However, for the last 3 years, Greg had finally managed to maintain a stable income, and I allowed myself to believe that he had finally grown up. Lately, he had been speaking frequently about making lasting memories as a family, suggesting that we invest in a $35,000 camper van so we could travel together. It seemed like a beautiful idea, a way to reward ourselves for years of struggle. However, when it came time to finalize the purchase, Greg's poor credit and history of job hopping meant he couldn't pass the finance company's loan review. Trusting him completely, I took the loan in my name, never imagining it was a trap. The day the camper van was delivered was supposed to be a day of celebration, but instead, it became the day my life collapsed. The email from Greg arrived just as the vehicle was being dropped off. He stated with unbelievable gall that he would be graciously taking the van since he needed a fresh start, and since the loan was in my name, I would be the one to handle the monthly repayments. When I finally got him on the phone for that brief, final conversation, his confession was devastating. He told me he had fallen in love with another woman, and that while it started as a flame, it had turned into something serious. He mentioned the divorce papers we had discussed during a particularly bad fight months ago, declared he would be filing them, and cut me off. He had planned this for a long time, waiting until the van was delivered and the loan was finalized before making his move. When I returned home that evening, the house felt like a tomb. I checked the drawer where the divorce papers should have been, and they were gone. Greg had stripped the house of his belongings and disappeared, leaving me with a $35,000 debt for a vehicle I didn't even have. For days, I tried to reach him, sending countless emails and calling his number until it went to voicemail. But there was no reply. Ryan, who had always been sensitive to my emotions, noticed my deterioration immediately. After dinner one night, he came to me with a look of deep concern. "Mom, what's wrong? You haven't been eating much lately? Are you okay?" I tried to put on a brave face, lying and saying I was just tired from work. Ryan looked at me steadily and said, "When people lie, they look up to the right. Lying is bad, Mom. I've noticed Dad hasn't been home for 3 days. Did something happen? Realizing I could no longer shield him from the reality of our situation, I sat him down and told him the truth. I expected him to cry or be angry, but Ryan remained remarkably calm. I see, he said quietly. It's just like Dad to do something like that. I asked him if he was sad, and he admitted that he had seen the signs coming for a while. Though he acted maturely, my heart ached for him. The stress of the situation began to take a physical toll on me. My body was reacting to the trauma even when my mind tried to stay strong. A few days later, during a training session at work, the room began to spin. I couldn't stand up and ended up squatting on the floor, gasping for air. My colleagues rushed to my side, their voices sounding like they were underwater, and then everything went black. I woke up in a hospital bed, staring at a sterile white ceiling. The doctor informed me that the chronic stress had exacerbated an underlying condition, and I needed immediate surgery. I felt completely pathetic, laying there with an IV drip in my arm, wondering how I would pay for medical bills on top of a car loan for a stolen van. When Ryan arrived at the hospital, his calm facade finally broke. He rushed to my side, his eyes wide with fear. "Mom, you're not going to die, right?" I held him tight and promised him I wasn't going anywhere. I underwent the surgery, and the recovery process took a full month. During that time, I was trapped in a hospital room while Greg was out somewhere enjoying the van I was paying for. When I was finally discharged and returned home, a demand letter for the car loan was waiting in my mailbox. I was confused because the payments were supposed to be deducted from our joint savings account, which had $20,000 in it. When I checked the balance, my heart stopped. There was only $33.90 left. Greg had not only stolen the van, but had also drained every penny of our savings before leaving. I was at my lowest point, physically weak and financially ruined. Ryan saw my despair and touched my forehead. "You're pale, Mom. Are you sick again?" I told him the truth, that we had no money and I didn't know how we would survive. Ryan didn't hesitate. He offered to get a paper route or find work online. His courage gave me the strength to stop mourning and start fighting. That was when Ryan revealed his secret plan. He reminded me that a month ago, when we went on a family hike, he had pretended to get lost so that we would buy him a kid's phone with a GPS tracking app. He had made sure the app was linked to Greg's phone as well. "I can see exactly where he is in real time," Ryan said, showing me his screen. He had also been doing detective work while I was in the hospital, discovering where Greg's mistress lived and where they were hiding. With Ryan's intelligence and my determination, we spent the next 3 days preparing our counterattack. The call finally came. Greg rang me, sounding frantic. He was being questioned by the police at a forest park and didn't know what to do. Ryan and I drove there immediately. We found the camper van parked near a campsite, with police officers standing by. I told the officers we needed a moment to speak as a family. Inside the van, the mistress, Mandy, was lounging comfortably, looking at me with pure disdain. Greg was flustered, demanding to know why the police were there. "I reported the car stolen, Greg," I said firmly. He laughed, claiming spouses can't steal from each other, but I reminded him that he had filed for divorce and left the household, which changed the legal landscape entirely. Ryan stepped forward then, confronting his father with a coldness that stunned Greg. "Why did you choose this woman over us?" he asked. Mandy tried to interject, bragging about her youth and beauty, but Ryan shut her down instantly. Greg confessed that Mandy was a new employee and was supposedly pregnant with his child. He admitted he wanted to sell the van, but decided to take a farewell trip first. That's when I dropped the bombshell. I told him we had tracked him via the GPS app Ryan had installed. Greg looked at his son in horror, realizing he had been outplayed by a 10-year-old. I demanded the $20,000 back, and when Greg tried to act like it was his money, I informed him that I would be adding the theft of those funds to my police report. At that moment, a car pulled up and 2 people stepped out, red-faced with fury. They were Mandy's parents. Ryan had found their address and told them everything while I was hospitalized. The final blow came when I pointed out the math of Mandy's pregnancy. If they had only met 3 months ago, but she was visibly much further along, the baby couldn't be Greg's. Mandy's face turned pale as she realized her lie was exposed. Greg had destroyed his life for a woman who was playing him for a fool. The police returned, and as they prepared to take Greg and Mandy into custody, Greg began to cry, begging for another chance. Ryan looked at him and said, "People don't change that easily, especially lazy people like you." I made it clear that I wouldn't be dropping the charges. I had already arranged for a lawyer to ensure Greg's future wages were garnished to pay back the $20,000, the car loan, and child support. Mandy's parents disowned her on the spot, refusing to help an accomplice to theft. In the months that followed, my health returned, and my spirit grew stronger than ever. I sold the camper van to settle the debt and moved into a smaller, peaceful home with Ryan. Greg is now working at a factory, with a significant portion of his paycheck coming directly to my account every month. Ryan continues to excel in school, his brilliant mind a constant source of pride for me. We lost a husband and a father, but we gained a life of honesty and strength. I am no longer a victim. I am a mother who, with the help of her incredible son, took back her life. Would you like me to focus more on the legal details of the settlement, or perhaps more on Ryan's perspective during the recovery period?